Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. Here are your top stories. It is Remembrance Day, a somber ceremony honoring our veterans. Plus, surprising results from Windsor's vacant home tax program. And a tragic death on the Ambassador Bridge is sparking conversations about mental health. We begin tonight with a brazen robbery at one of Windsor's longest-running sports gear retailers. Within minutes, the shop was cleaned out of thousands in merchandise. It is the worst theft in the store's history. Dawson Chen has more.
Bob Rayom Sports has been in business for 43 years, but Rayom says what happened to his store early Monday was a first. Thieves made off with an estimated $40,000 in merchandise, almost all of it consisting of sports jerseys.
Hockey, baseball, football. I mean, what are you going to do about it? It happens. Didn't think it would happen this large type of thing, but somebody obviously knew what they were doing, what they wanted.
The crime happened around 5:45 a.m. on November 11. Rayom's security camera shows that the perpetrators used a vehicle to rip the door off the storefront at 5400 Tecumseh Road East. Once the thieves were inside, Rayom says they knew where to get what they were after. He estimates they were in the store for less than 5 minutes.
My estimation, and even the police said quite possibly, they had somebody from out of town. This is what we want. We'll take the whole thing. Go get it. We'll pay you.
Not only is this the biggest theft Bob Rayom Sports has experienced, it's leaving the store with less inventory during a critical time, right during the holiday shopping season. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
In a housing shortage, homes that sit empty, well, they hurt. The city asked residents to help identify vacant homes so the municipality could hit them with an extra tax. As Chris Ensing reports, the complaint-driven approach yielded surprising results.
The City of Windsor essentially wants neighbors to snitch on each other, saying it's a small step towards solving the housing crisis. It's a complaint-based vacant home tax introduced in June, and administration says the results so far have been surprising. Now, Windsor's not the only place that does this, adding a 3% tax to property bills if the home has been unoccupied or empty for more than half a year. Toronto's doing this, but their version required homeowners to declare a home occupied or empty. It was a confusing process, led to tens of thousands of complaints, and they're doing a complete overhaul. That's why Windsor's taken this soft approach. Here's how the process works. Someone tips off 311 that a home is empty. City staff connect with the property owner and see if the home has been empty for more than half the year. There's exemptions, like if the house is for sale or rent until it's been empty for 12 consecutive months, and no tax if there's renovations happening with an active permit. Homeowners have a 2-year grace period if they've entered long-term care. So what's the surprise? City staff thought there were between 250 and 500 empty homes in Windsor, and they've had more than 200 tips to 311 since June, with more than half resulting in this charge. But what surprised staff was the 70 property owners who told on themselves. The city's working with people to get those places occupied, and in some cases, sending them to the building department to update their permits for those renovations. The city might get to a point where they identify these empty homes themselves, but for now, they're asking the public to call 311. So, where are the empty homes? Well, administration says they're popping up all around the city, but the West End does have a large batch. And how much does this tax actually amount to? Well, for a property like the one behind me here that's been vacant for years, that tax comes up to about $1,000. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
A tragedy on the Ambassador Bridge over the weekend is sparking conversations about mental health in our community. On Saturday, a border officer died by suicide while on the job. Traffic into Canada was rerouted for several hours as police investigated. And now in the aftermath, condolences are pouring in both from the CBSA as well as the Customs and Immigration Union. And the union is also pointing out that this is bringing to light some of the challenges that public safety officers deal with on the job on a regular basis. Here's what Simon Hatcher had to say. He's a psychiatrist who focuses on mental health of first responders.
They are exposed more than other people to things like trauma, to doing difficult things that most of us wouldn't usually do in their day-to-day job.
José Jarry, a psychology professor at the University of Windsor, says she was shocked and saddened to hear the news. She encourages workers at the bridge to lean on one another at this time, to talk to each other and to check in if they're worried.
If you see that your colleague looks distraught, to talk about them, don't hesitate. And don't hesitate to check. Checking on people about whether they might feel suicidal does not increase the risk that they will act on their suicidal impulse, but it might go a long way to make them feel not so lonely and to have the feeling that they can be heard.
But she acknowledges that talking about mental health might be a bit more challenging for Border Patrol or law enforcement workers.
We know that in cultures where there's a high value placed on being resilient, being autonomous, and being capable of facing hardship, there is great hesitation to express difficulties and reach out for help.
CBSA says that it has met with the team and is encouraging workers to seek out mental health supports that are available to them. If you or anyone you know is struggling, you can reach out to Canada's Suicide Crisis Helpline, call or text 988, or the local 24-hour crisis line 519-973-4435. Chris Potter joins us now for a look at weather. Chris, November really has arrived. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
you feel the chill today.
And you're going to feel it tonight. You're going to feel it tomorrow. And after that, things do improve temperature-wise. But, I mean, tomorrow and tomorrow night, you're definitely going to feel the difference. Temperatures today did peak in the double digits through Windsor and Chatham, close to 10 through Sarnia, Goderich, London. A system tracking well to our north is creating a lot of cloud cover. Pardon me. Most areas across southwestern Ontario just dealt with cloud cover, but dry conditions. But there was an area of rainfall and even a few embedded thunderstorms moved through Goderich, London, now continuing to advance through the Golden Horseshoe. Temperatures around 4 for the overnight. At times we will become mostly cloudy, but it will be dry. The wind's still breezy as they come in from the north. 5 degrees tomorrow morning and then 9 for tomorrow afternoon, but it's sunny. Will that trend last? We'll have those details coming up. Kat.
Thanks for that, Chris. We'll check back in with you later in the program.
You got it.
Windsorites came together to mark Remembrance Day with a ceremony at the downtown cenotaph. Teresa Charbonneau, Silver Cross mother to Corporal Andrew Grennan, spoke and delivered remarks from Charles Davis, a Windsor D-Day veteran.
The words that I am going to speak are the words of Charlie Davis, who is our 102-year-old veteran. This past June, I traveled back to Normandy and to Juno Beach for the 80th anniversary of D-Day to pay my respects once again, but this time was different. As I gazed out at the water on Juno Beach and thought of my comrades, I knew that this would be my last visit. At 102 years old, I'm almost certain of it.
I have to say that I do it because it's needed to be done. People need to know, people need to hear it over and over again, and we need to teach our children that freedom is not free, it never was, and it never will be. They need to know what our veterans, what their veterans did for them. That's the reason I do what I do.
In Ottawa this morning, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Governor General Mary Simon attended a Remembrance Day ceremony at the National War Memorial. They were joined by this year's Silver Cross mother, Maureen Anderson of New Brunswick. Both of her sons served in Afghanistan. Olivia Stefanovich has more on today's ceremony.
In a world increasingly threatened by conflict, a reminder of the price of freedom. those who sacrificed their lives for our country.
This is a legacy that should continue, because if we don't and we forget, we'll be overtaken.
At the very back of the Veterans Parade, applause erupted for 90-year-old Korean War veteran Bill Black, who says he was reminded of the cheers his father received when he returned from the Second World War.
I was thinking about that and thinking about how years ago we didn't have these crowds out, and now Canada seems to be paying more attention than ever to the veterans, and that's very much appreciated.
This year's Remembrance Day marks 80 years since D-Day, the beginning of the end of the Second World War. John Priest was one of the only World War II veterans present, signaling the changing face of the national ceremony.
It is very important, again, that Canadians be reminded of the service that they can offer Canada via the Canadian Armed Forces.
This year's National Silver Cross mother, Maureen Anderson, lost both her sons to post-traumatic stress disorder after serving in Afghanistan. Agatha Dyer also lost her son in that mission, which ended a decade ago. She returned to Ottawa for the first time since she was appointed Silver Cross mother 20 years ago.
It's very hard when you lose your loved one. Can't be harder when you lost a child.
In what's become a tradition, thousands of people surrounded the tomb of the unknown soldier after the ceremony to lay down their poppies, a small gesture heavy with symbolism and gratitude for all those who continue to lay down their lives. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
The number of people who take public transit has dropped in many parts of the country since the pandemic. Some observers point to less demand, others to higher fares. But in at least one Canadian town, ridership has doubled, and that's because it's free. Anise Haydari has the story.
It's fairly easy to grab the bus in Orangeville, Ontario.
And like no monthly pass, no tickets, no cash to pay for like your fare pass that you have to pay in other cities.
It's free for everyone.
This is my way to get around back and forth to appointments, to my kids' school.
In 2022, around 100,000 people took the bus there. This year, they're projecting more than 260,000. Politicians were aiming for more than just convenience.
We knew that by offering fare-free transit, we could have an environmental positive impact, taking more vehicles off the road and offering a better option for our residents. But also we knew that there was a really strong social equity piece from a financial perspective.
Orangeville is testing this idea until 2027, and the mayor says it's catching on elsewhere.
I get real interest from municipalities of all sizes, from small rural to small urban like we are, right to big cities.
And the idea has made inroads in some big U.S. cities, like Kansas City, Albuquerque, and Tucson. But in Canada, this transit expert says don't expect a free ride.
It has a place, an opportunity for smaller and maybe medium-sized communities. For larger communities, such as Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, it's going to be an uphill climb.
Big cities need the money that transit fare brings in. Smaller towns can offer residents free rides, not just Orangeville, but Banff and Canmore, Alberta, too. Though larger cities have to choose who gets a discount. Here in Calgary, that targeting costs governments more than $6 million. It's meant to help younger people, seniors, and those with lower incomes. Tailoring transit discounts to specific people matches other policies in Canada, like income support or taxes.
You'd want to make it free for everyone. It's very costly. So what do? You target certain demographic that you deemed more important. So I think it's an important first step.
But it's more than a first step back in Orangeville, where the project is expanding to a nearby town. Anise Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
A live look outside there at Detroit. When we come back, international news for you, including Donald Trump's latest staffing appointments as he prepares to take the White House. Stay with us. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has begun appointing top-level staff ahead of taking office in January. That includes the person who will be responsible for his promised mass deportations. CBC's Richard Madden has more from Washington.
Well, former and future President Donald Trump is moving quickly to fill his inner circle, including some familiar names to enact his hardline immigration policies. Tom Homan, the former head of ICE under Trump 1.0, will return for the Trump sequel as his border czar, tasked with carrying out those mass deportations Trump promised during the campaign. Now he'll be in charge of securing the southern and northern border. Homan is a big backer of Trump's so-called zero-tolerance policy, which led to thousands of families being separated at the southern border during the first Trump presidency, and he's vowed to, quote, run the biggest deportation force this country has ever seen. He shared his priorities in a recent interview on 60 Minutes. Take a listen.
Why should a child who is an American citizen have to pack up and move to a country that they don't know?
Because their parent obviously entered the country illegally, had a child knowing he was in the country illegally, so he created that crisis.
And joining Homan is Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's policy during the last administration, who's returning to the White House as a lead policy advisor. On the national security front, Trump has reportedly offered New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik the role of UN ambassador. Now, Stefanik has a history of attacking the UN. She's a staunch supporter of Israel and has accused the world body of anti-Semitism for criticizing Israel's bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Now, she'll be tasked with carrying out Trump's pro-Israel agenda. No question, this is a major elevation for Stefanik, the once vocal Trump critic who's quickly become one of his fiercest, most partisan loyalists, defending him during his first impeachment and refusing to certify the 2020 election results when Trump lost. She was even on the short list to be Trump's running mate this election. Now, Republicans say Stefanik is one of their best and most aggressive communicators. Other names being floated to be in Trump's cabinet: North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum to energy, Republican Senator Marco Rubio to Secretary of State, tech mogul Elon Musk to oversee government spending cuts, and of course, vaccine skeptic Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in a health portfolio. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
The United Nations Conference on Climate Change, known as COP29, is now underway in Azerbaijan. Delegates from around the world are gathering in Baku. Their focus is on the developing world and helping those countries move away from fossil fuels. But as Susan Ormiston tells us, the recent U.S. election is looming large at the conference.
The world's biggest climate talks open today in Baku, Azerbaijan, and on everyone's minds, the president-elect in the United States, a climate skeptic. If the climate landscape weren't bleak enough, 2024 is certain to be the hottest year on record. Savage storms, heating seas, and now the United States government under Donald Trump may pull out of international climate treaties. In Baku today, at the start of COP29, the U.S.'s top climate diplomat was frank.
In January, we're going to inaugurate a president whose relationship to climate change is captured by the words hoax and fossil fuels. He's vowed to dismantle our environmental safeguards and once again withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. That is what he has said, and we should believe him.
COP29 has been called the finance COP, asking rich countries how much they'll pay for climate damages in developing countries and help those countries move away from oil, gas, and coal. But the cost is enormous, over $1 trillion. And the specter of the U.S. not committing its fair share is putting a pall on the negotiations.
It's a huge, huge setback for the global climate action. It's devastating, to say the least, because what we want to see now is more progress and not backtracking, and no climate denial, and no expansion of fossil fuels, and huge amount of finance that is needed.
But there is no going back. The climate has its own timeline already. We've seen a full year of temperatures rising above 1.5 degrees Celsius. Pressure will be on Canada to come up with a bigger share of investment, even as it faces its own election next year. John Podesta, who is out of a job in 2 months, is playing the long game.
This is not the end of our fight for a cleaner, safer planet. Facts are still facts. Science is still science. The fight is bigger than one election, one political cycle, in one country.
COP continues for 2 weeks in Baku. Canada's Environment and Climate Change Minister will outline this country's role on Tuesday. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Toronto.
Chris Potter will be with us right after the break for a look at your weather this week. Stay with us. Chris Potter is back with us for a look at our weather forecast. And Chris, we talked a little bit about how gloomy it was earlier. I left my house today, looked in my backyard, and my husband had gotten rid of our pumpkin, and it was like sitting on this bin on top of like old weeds that had been pulled out of the garden. It was just this sad sight, made more sad by the gray weather and the wind blowing. And I was like, okay, we're here. The sun's gone.
Yeah, we're here.
What, like, is there any hope ahead, or is it just gloom and doom for the week?
I got to tell you, tomorrow, sunshine, just for you. And everyone else. It's just going to be a little bit cooler than it was today. We'll call it winds of change. And obviously the winds were a bit of an issue locally. Northerly winds gusting to around 50 to 55 kilometers an hour. They'll start to edge down gradually through the evening, overnight, and especially into the day tomorrow as high pressure arrives. Normal daytime high is around 9.4, close to 14 for the daytime high. But look at the overnight low. Early this morning it was close to 9 degrees compared to the normal, which is closer to 2. Not much variability temperature-wise across the entire region. 10 in Ottawa, 7 Toronto, 10 right right now in Windsor and Chatham, and the temperatures closer to home are very similar, anywhere from 6 in Kitchener, 10 through Chatham and Windsor. Those temperatures will be above zero tonight and early tomorrow morning, but the winds will make it feel a little bit colder. Just keep that in mind. It might make it feel closer to the below the 0 degree territory. The rainfall has moved in across areas well to the north and east, and we're going to start to see the northerly winds perhaps pick up a little bit of moisture off of Lake Huron. A couple of hit or miss lake effect showers in the vicinity of Sarnia, Lambton Shores, possibly up towards Goderich. This is short-lived. The winds shift a little bit through the overnight, almost more of a northeasterly wind. Lots of sunshine for tomorrow morning. Lots of sunshine for the afternoon, and clear and still quite fresh during the evening and overnight. As we get into the day on Wednesday, we'll quickly cloud over. Most of this is going to be mid to high level cloud, which means no chance for rain on Wednesday, even though it might get a little bit grayer throughout the afternoon. But as we step forward into the day on your Thursday, it does look like a system moves in across lower Michigan. That's going to spread some widespread light rainfall across the entire region. So make some plans for that. Have your umbrella handy for you on your Thursday. In terms of the overnight, once again, a couple of hit or miss showers up towards Sarnia. The rest of the region will lose a lot of that cloud cover in the early morning, leaving abundant sunshine. Temperatures just shy of 10 degrees. But once again, these temperatures are normal, so it's sunny and seasonable for tomorrow, and a little bit milder, just by a little bit, as we get into Wednesday and Thursday with highs near 11. And once we get into Thursday, temperatures peak at around 12. Morning rainfall, we should start to dry out through the afternoon, and then reasonable for Friday and Saturday. And it looks like next week, every single day, will be in the double digits. Kat.
Love that. We'll take what we can get. Thanks for that, Chris, and thanks to you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.